Hey, what's going on, college football fans? We're back again for another episode of the Swampy Coliseum Podcast. Nathaniel, how you feeling this week?
I'm feeling pretty good, feeling pretty excited. How are you feeling?
Well, as you can see, I'm in the car today. I'm out on the road, just as a symbol of where I expect Billy Napier to be sometime soon. Oh man, we're just muddling along here as a Florida Gator fan. We'll start off with them. Oh, going into this week against Texas A&M, we had a little bit of hope, just a little bit, thinking maybe we'll play DJ Lagway. He decides to play both quarterbacks kind of back and forth every couple series. And out right before the game that Connor Wegman, their starting quarterback, is out. So they're playing their backup. Hope lost from the jump. Texas A&M scored on their first 4 possessions. We're down 20-0. We end up losing the game 33-20. It was not even that close. It was not that close at all. They had 310 rushing yards down. Our defense couldn't stop anything, and it was brutal. I watched the press conference after the game. I looked at the press conference from today to see what Billy would have to say about the team, and he said they're committed to playing both guys at quarterback. We're going to keep it up. I mean, in the game, honestly, Mertz probably played better overall, but neither of them were making anything really happen that was exciting whenever it was necessary. All of our good plays happened after we were already down by 20 points. So just a disappointing loss. We're heading into Mississippi State this week, which we're favored by 5.5 points.
Oh gosh.
Who knows? I mean, they just lost to Toledo 41-17. So could we possibly scrape up some hope for this game? No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to say, yes, I think we're going to win. I will go against the Gators. I will pick against the Gators until they prove to me that they could actually make something happen. You know, Mississippi State's coming in. First-year coach Jeff Lebby, who took over during the season last year. But look at his coaching resume, who he's coached under. He was at Oklahoma. He's from the Art Briles coaching tree. He was under Josh Heupel at UCF. He's been under a lot of good systems and coaches. So offensive mind there for sure. They have Blake Shapen, who came over from Baylor. So they have some pieces, and basically it's a matchup of 2 bottom feeders of the SEC. That's what we're seeing this week. And an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff where 2 of the worst teams in the SEC are going to be matching up. So Florida, I don't know. I don't have much to I guess I do have much to say about them, but beyond what I just mentioned, not really much to say. Did you take anything from the Florida game this week?
I think the moment I heard that Graham Mertz was starting, I remember I texted you. I was like, "What's happening here?" And you're like, "They're gonna play both of them." And that moment, I was like, "All right, well, now I take back everything I said about Florida winning," because I think if
Right.
if you're ever in a situation where you have 2 quarterbacks and you don't know which one to go and you just push both of them out there, like
Right.
you're not, like we talked about Michigan a couple weeks ago. Like if you have 2 QBs, you have none. And
Right.
I mean, I think besides maybe the whole Texas situation we have coming up, you're not gonna, you're not gonna do well. I remember USC, we had a situation like that. It was Cody Kessler, then Max Whittick, and
Mm.
Steve Sarkisian tried to play both of them. Or no, it was Lane Kiffin tried to play both. He got fired. So maybe it's yeah, kind of like you're saying, this might be kind of the beginning of the end, and Billy Napier's just trying to rearrange chairs on the Titanic.
It seems like it. It's strange. And some people want to call back to, say, the 06 team where you had Leak and Tebow. That was Chris Leak's team. Tim Tebow threw a total of, I think, 33 passes that whole year. He was a running quarterback, and most of those passes came in garbage time when he came in at the end because we were up by so much. So that was Chris Leak's team. Tebow played a role, but there was no sort of switching back and forth between the two. And the Texas situation you're talking about, the situation isn't Sarkisian saying they're both good, we'll play both. It's they just have two good options, and we'll see which one starts, depending on injury. So just a disappointing season. And needless to say, looking at how my Jaguars are this year too, my whole weekend is kind of shot with how things are going right now. So Florida, like I said, we got Mississippi State this week. We'll talk more about the matchup, and next week we'll rehash how it goes. But yeah, just kind of have to leave it at that and hope we can watch good football otherwise. But let's go to USC coming off a bye week this week, and now we're heading into a big matchup up at the Big House. What do you got going on this week?
Yeah, I mean, coming off the bye week, this is USC's just big welcome to the Big Ten moment. They travel to Ann Arbor to face Michigan, and the biggest question, the question that's been going around ever since they decided to move to the Big Ten, is that will they be tough enough? Will they be physical enough to play in the Big Ten? I think this is a big introduction. Michigan might not be exactly what we thought they would be at the beginning of the year. They're definitely not the team they were last year, but they're still a team loaded on the defensive line. They're still a team that's tough and physical, that will beat you up on the O line and D line. And yeah, so I think that's a good kind of litmus test for USC, who is their they're slated to win. I think the line's -5.5 towards USC. So that'll be interesting, especially at Michigan. But yeah, USC showed a lot of toughness on both sides of the ball against LSU, but Michigan is just a different beast. Our D line is going to have to contend with a really strong rushing attack that Michigan brings, especially with Orji coming in. He definitely provides a lot more to think about rushing the ball over Davis Warren. And Warren, we talked about it, doesn't really look like a good quarterback, but they just kept pushing him out there. He had 3 interceptions against whoever they were playing last week at some nobody school. Tough. And I think Orji, they're just hoping that he's going to figure it out, because Orji has just the dynamic running ability, but we'll see if he has, his passing ability will be able to keep up with them. And I think the big question for Danton Lynn is, Michigan has a bigger offensive line than our defensive line. So how are we going to overcome size and depth disadvantages? And will our offensive line, they've had a lot of lapses, but they've been pretty good all year. So will they be able to just be consistently open up those running lanes and allow Miller Moss to kind of do his thing? It'll be a packed crowd. Definitely the craziest environment USC will play in all year. And I think really the key players to this game is going to be our linebackers, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, Mason Cobb, and Eric Gentry. They're just going to have to be moving around a lot to make tackles, be able to, keep that running game in check. Offensively, I think Woody Marks, our running back, our tight end, are going to have big games if we want success on that ball or side of the ball. I think I'm like 99% sold on Miller Moss, but this is going to be a crazy environment. I think, with a big game here, he's going to be in New York at the end of the season. So I'm excited. I think USC's going to be able to pull off a win. I think Lincoln Riley is going to be able to scheme up something big. And sorry, I gave my prediction a little too early. I caught myself halfway and I'm like, it's too late. Already rolled through it.
No, you're in it. Well, that's where the passion comes out for USC. And bold proclamation there saying Miller Moss might end up at the Heisman ceremony in New York at the end of the season. But hey, man, you just coming off of a guy doing it last year. Why can't you fit in Miller Moss and do it again?
Yep, exactly.
And yeah, Caleb Williams off to a bit of a rough start in the NFL, but we don't have to talk about that right now. We can move on. We have some more interesting things that happened from this week. Let's start off with our former number one team in the country, Georgia, with a close victory against Kentucky. We talked last week about South Carolina just dominating Kentucky. Brock Vandagriff looked awful. It looked like Georgia would roll over Kentucky. Only a 13-12 victory that was way closer than any Bulldog fans would want to see. And they actually dropped a spot to number 2 in the polls behind Texas. So it was pretty crazy. They scraped by with a victory over Kentucky that was so close. Did you have any thoughts on that?
I just feel like Georgia always has a game or two where they just don't really have it together. They play down to their competition. They had that Missouri game where like last year they had that Kentucky game like 2 years ago. And their offense just looked dead. I think they had like they didn't even break 300 yards of offense. Carson Beck, he just, it's like one of those games where they didn't have the ball a ton. Kentucky was just able to run it just consistently and just take time off the clock. And Georgia really wasn't able to get in rhythm. I think, I think Georgia's kind of lucky that Brock Vandagriff, former Georgia Bulldog, just couldn't really complete a pass past 10 yards. So I think, and they also punted. Kentucky punted with like 3 or 4 minutes left at midfield. Like, damn, they just didn't have the balls to win it, and I think Georgia just hung on. If they play like that against almost any other SEC school, I think they're losing that game. But they got lucky, squeezed out a victory, and yeah, they just have to keep looking forward.
Yeah, definitely almost any other SEC school, but Georgia still gets away with it. I'll point out their 42nd straight regular season victory.
Insane.
And this, in that 42 game streak, this is the first time they've won by 3 or less points.
Really?
That means for 42 straight regular season games, Georgia has covered a 3-point spread. That's wild. That's pretty crazy. But they're still up there. But of course, they're replaced in that number 1 spot by Texas, who your Heisman pick at the beginning of the season, Quinn Ewers, went down with an injury. He's questionable this week with an oblique strain. They're going to be playing against Louisiana Monroe, so it should be no problem. But Arch Manning steps in, takes his place easily. 5 touchdowns, easily had control of the offense. Texas looks like it might be the best team in the country.
I think they're just so well-rounded. Their offensive line is just, I think, the best in the country. They're saying stuff about LSU having the best. No, Texas, the offensive line is just amazing. They defensively, they kind of reloaded and they look good defensively. And Quinn Ewers, Archie Manning, doesn't really matter. They're both really good quarterbacks. I think this is still Quinn Ewers' team, but that offense just has so many playmakers, and it's hard to see, especially how well they're doing right now. It's hard to tell that Texas team, oh, you're still number 2 behind a Georgia team that beat Kentucky 13-12, even after, strength of schedule and all that stuff. So I think Texas is definitely kind of positioning themselves to stay at number 1 for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree. If they show that strength, it'll just continue and continue. One game I mentioned last week, I said we need to see a breakout performance sometime by one Avery Johnson. And we got that breakout performance. I think teams, Kansas State had their way. They won 31-7, controlled the whole time. Avery Johnson, 150 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 110 rushing yards. He was doing everything out there. K-State looks like it could really make some movement and have a chance in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think my two takeaways was just how kind of dynamic that running game is for Kansas State, and I think that that matchup with Oklahoma State in a couple weeks, that's going to be a really fun one where it's who can stop the other's rushing attack, and I think the other takeaway is how bad Arizona is. I think
Mm.
they have no playmakers outside of Ted McMillan. I think Fafita, Kansas State figured out how to make Fafita not look good. Like he was late on a lot of throws. He looked confused out there. So yeah, but going back to Kansas State, I think that's definitely going to be a contender in the Big 12 championship conversations. And there's a reason why they just said they looked at Will Howard and they're like, "See you later, bud. We don't really need you."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they have a chance. I'm excited. Even this week, we've got some good Big 12 matchups to look at. But this will be our last comment on this team for a while. I say we don't talk about this team anymore for the rest of the season unless they're taking on a top team that we want to mention. FSU's done.
They're
FSU.
done.
This was this was the last straw going up against Mike Norvell's former team, the Memphis Tigers. They lose 20-12. It's over. We don't need to talk about them anymore.
Nope.
We don't.
Nope.
I don't. You don't even need to add anything. I don't think. We'll just move on. We'll say they're done, and we'll talk about them when they play Florida at the end of the year. That'll be maybe our next mention. One of the bigger matchups that we saw talked about coming into the week was Alabama going to Wisconsin, but Alabama made easy work of it. No problem, dominated most of the whole game, and so not really many other great games to talk about.
Yeah, just one game I wanted to highlight before we move on was that LSU South Carolina game. I think that was
Yes.
probably game of the week.
Mm.
We talked about it a little. I will say last week I said that South Carolina, I didn't say they sucked, but I just said they didn't look like they were a team that could beat LSU. They were up 17 to start the game, and that rushing attack is really good. Sellers, when he was healthy, and Rocket Sanders just looked great out there. There was moments in the game when Ashford was in, and you were just watching the game. They're like, it is a 100% chance that South Carolina's running this ball, and then Rocket Sanders literally scores a 66-yard touchdown. So
Huh.
they look good, and honestly, they were a bad call away from putting away LSU in that game on that pick six. And I think just the biggest takeaway for LSU is that they need a running game. I don't think Nussmeier is a guy that can carry the team on his back consistently. He's a great quarterback, but I just don't think he can consistently just force drives downfield that you want someone like a Jaden Daniels, something he did just consistently. They just need to find that dynamic runner. And once they start to get some good running game going, like that's when they started to rack up yards, rack up points. And that's when they kind of made it close.
Right. And it was unfortunate to see. I logged on and watched it near the end, and I saw Ashford was in the game. I was upset to not see Sellers in there, but LSU was able to score there at the end and almost got that pick right. Almost had it, but LSU came away with the victory. So some good matchups this week, but we have some other good ones to look at for this week to come. But first, we've got our trivia question of the week. Nathaniel's got one prepared for me. Let's hear it. What do we got today, Nathaniel?
All right. So with the whole 12-team playoff and, trying to invite everyone and have a place for everyone at the table coming up, I just thought it'd be interesting to kind of take a look at maybe some underdog stories from the college football playoff era. So
Mm.
since the CFP started in
Okay.
2014, can
Yeah.
you name the four teams? you don't have to do years because years are always so tricky, especially like when the game played. But can you name the 4 non-Power 5 teams to win a New York Six bowl game
A New
since
Year's Six bowl
2014?
game?
Yep, since 2014.
Okay, New Year's Six or a playoff game? Just New
New
Year's
Year's
Six?
Six because there's 0 from
Yeah.
just the playoffs.
Yeah, there's 0 who have gone. Man, see, I thought you were going with who's been in the playoff, and I was thinking Cincinnati.
Yeah, there's only
Which
one.
could be a pick. Yeah. Then technically, I guess Notre Dame kind of isn't Power 5 because they're not in a conference.
Yeah.
But man, who just won a New Year's Six game going back to 2014. I mean, with that, you got to go UCF. UCF beat Auburn in 2017.
Yep, in the Peach Bowl.
UCF is won the Peach Bowl against Auburn. National champions, they would call themselves. Along with that, man, my mind wants to go to Boise State. My mind goes to Cincinnati. There are a lot of interesting teams to choose from. Has Cincinnati won?
No, they have not. They've been in one New Year's Six bowl game, I think the year before they made the playoffs that they lost, and then when they made the playoffs. And they lost both.
Okay, gotcha. Not Cincy. I'm still thinking Boise State. I'm considering, man, I'm trying to roll through some Power 5. There have been some great matchups over time. Of course, going back before thinking about that Boise State Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. But, man, other good matchups. One to throw. Oh, hold on. Wait a second. Was Tulane against USC a New Year's Six bowl?
It certainly was. 2022,
Yeah.
Tulane beating USC in the Cotton Bowl.
Okay, that's 2. That was a crazy
2 out of
game.
4.
My guy Tyjae Spears.
Oh man,
I'm looking for him to pop off. We'll see. But that's 2 right there. Hey, can I think of anything else? Any other matchups? You got. Let me see. Can you tell me a team they beat?
Okay, so we'll go back starting from the oldest.
Okay.
So the oldest of the 2, and by the way, these were back-to-back years, if that gives you
Right.
a nice little hint. The oldest, that team beat Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl.
Wow. Beat Arizona in the Fiesta Bowl. Oh man. You're testing me here. This is a tough one. What's the second one?
The second one, they beat Florida State in the Peach Bowl.
Oh, Florida State in the Peach.
And I will say the first one, you have said this team a lot.
I'm talking about this. Oh, is it Boise State?
Yes.
Is it Boise State? Okay, well, so what was that matchup?
So it was Boise State beat Arizona in the 2014 Fiesta Bowl.
Wow. Yeah, I don't remember that game at all.
Yeah.
Back to 2014, 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and the last one we're looking for in 2015, FSU lost to this team.
Yeah, this team is now in a Power 5 conference.
Makes sense. We talking someone like, let me see. We talking someone like SMU, someone like, I might need another hint. I don't know. I don't think I got this one.
So they were a pretty good team in the mid 2000s. They had a head coach. Oh, I don't know if this is giving too much. They have a head coach from a really good, like a decent Big 12 team back in the day. Like this head coach coached Will Greer.
Yeah, okay, we're talking West Virginia. Wilger, so their coach. Oh man, yeah, he moved on after coaching at West Virginia. Where I'm back and forth. I'm thinking my mind goes to Dana Holgerson. Is that basketball?
That is the coach I'm talking about.
Okay, Dana Holgerson. Man, he where did he go? Where did he go? Who is it?
It's Houston.
Houston, that's right. Houston. Yeah, Houston really had some good teams there for a while. So Houston beat FSU back in 15. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so came away with UCF and Tulane for sure. I remember those games, but the first two were tough.
Yeah, the boy, like when I was looking this up, like when I saw the Boise State game, I don't even like that's not even a game in my memory. Like I don't even believe that that
Yeah.
happened. Because like you think like Boise State when you think of, New York City, New Year's. Wow, New York sick, New Year's Six is obviously the Oklahoma game. But yeah, when it popped up and it was back to back, it's kind of crazy.
That's some good stuff. Nice one. We'll come back with another trivia question next week. I'll see if I can stump Nathaniel. But let's go back to this season. And we're talking risers and fallers from the AP Top 25. Interesting, really not much movement here. There are no teams who are still in the top 25 who moved more than maybe 2 spots.
Yeah.
So we've got some interesting things to look at here. Who's your biggest riser from this past week?
I think biggest riser for me just has to be Tennessee. I think as as the season's going on, like obviously didn't face that big of competition, but with kind of the landscape around them going, I think just looking at that defense is good. And I think, Nico, I think he's ready to kind of take the reins and kind of bring this team to some big heights. I think, yeah, that SEC schedule is going to prove tough, but I think they are really a playoff contending team. I think they can sneak in, and I think they can make some noise.
Yeah, absolutely. They're a team I wish I had in my uh, top 12, my playoff at the end of the year. They're looking so good. I saw their defense in 3 games is giving up 4.3 points a game. They're just shutting people down. And we want to talk about their offense, but the defense has been crazy.
So
My biggest riser, I was tempted to just say Texas. they went from 2-1, but that means a lot going to that first spot and taking over Georgia's spot. But I'm going to say Memphis. We already talked about the team that they beat, but Memphis comes from outside the top 25 to into the top 25 and are popping up into that national spotlight. I don't think a lot of people gave them a chance to win this game. Definitely at the beginning of this year, this was supposed to be just a cakewalk win for Florida State, but Memphis has now come in. They're into the top 25, and we'll see where they can go from there. But from there, biggest fallers. Who do you got as your biggest faller now?
This one also, I think this is back-to-back weeks. I pick a team that didn't really lose, but I think I'm gonna have to go with Missouri. I think they beat Boston College, which I think is a good team. But it was at home. It was way too close. And when you're playing a team like Boston College, not in the top 25, you're at home, you have every advantage in the world and you struggle to put them away. Your offense can't really do anything, crazy against, an ACC team that doesn't look amazing defensively. You start to have questions like, are you going to be able to, handle the rest of the schedule? Will you be able to keep a number 7? I think they're 7. Like, are you able to keep that ranking? And I always kind of felt, last 2 weeks they're up a little high, especially over teams like, Miami against Penn State and Oregon, teams that have kind of proven their worth. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Missouri kind of handles the rest of their schedule.
Yeah, and you can look back to check me on this. Are there 6 SEC teams in the top 7 of the rankings? That is
Yeah, no, you're right. I looked at Texas, I was like, nah, then yeah, they're the SEC now.
that is wild to think about. And I believe there are 8 overall, but 6 of the top 7 is just crazy. My biggest faller from the week is a team we've mentioned already. It's Arizona.
One team that was number 20 in the rankings and dropped out of the top 25 due to their loss to Kansas State. And it was an opportunity. Fafita and Ted McMillan, their connection is amazing. But they weren't even close to being able to stand up against Kansas State. So, tough loss for them to take for sure.
As they're heading into the rest of this year, and we'll see if they can make their way back into the top 25. I'm sure they will. They have a really good team, but definitely took a fall after this week. But with that, we're on to our picks for this week. Last week, we had a 4-1 slate on my part, 3-2 for you, with 3 picks different for the two of us, which made it interesting for sure. But I was able to come up. That South Carolina pick was the only thing that kept me from a perfect week. But we've got another chance to go perfect this week as we have some really good games. I think we've got better games this week than we've had in the past couple. So let's start it off with our first one, maybe the juiciest matchup of this week of games. We have number 6 Tennessee going on the road to number 15 Oklahoma. Now an SEC matchup here, and I'll make my pick first this time. We've got Tennessee. We've talked all about them. Their defense, stellar. Nico Iamaleava, I think that's right. He has been great, and their team is just showing their strength. But they're going to Oklahoma, a Brent Venables coach team that's very good, obviously. I just think that Tennessee's shown enough to say that we can trust them. Same things I've been saying about Florida. I won't trust them until they do something. Tennessee's the opposite. I'm going to say I trust them at this point, that they can go into Oklahoma and have a victory. What about you?
Yeah, I think this is big test for Nico. I think that NC State game was supposed to be a big test. Apparently not. They kind of just ran through NC State. This is also a big test for Jackson Arnold. I think, Brent Venables, he is, trying to get this defense back on track after just not a great last 2 years, and it's looking better. Obviously, I haven't played that great of competition. And Jackson Arnold, he had a lot of turnover issues, honestly, just in the bowl game against Arizona. And that was kind of that last marquee matchup that he had. So it's kind of, yeah, we'll see how he does against a good defense. They've come out the gate pretty slow offensively. And I think because of that, I think Tennessee, which is already in almost full gear right now, I think they're just going to run through them.
Yeah, with our next game, we're staying in the Sooner State, but we've got the Oklahoma State Cowboys hosting a Utah team that has just been consistent over previous years. Super consistent team. Number 12 Utah against number 14 Oklahoma State. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think this game they haven't kind of told us anything about Cam Rising, and I think this kind of falls on, the game will fall on if Cam Rising's playing or not. So with Cam Rising, that's a really good offense, a really consistent, everything's on track, everything happens, and he's a great dynamic player. Without him, they're not putting up a lot of points. They let Baylor come back. They didn't struggle against Utah State, but a 38-21 win over Utah State isn't really inspiring. I think Cam Rising will be ready for this game. And I think this is going to be a really good game. But I think Oklahoma State just has a lot better talent around, and I think they have more seniority and veteranship, and I think they're going to take this one.
Yeah, this is basically a pick 'em game. It looks like Utah is a 1.5 point favorite, but on the road, they're expecting it to be really close. And if you look back at our preseason predictions, we both have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12, having that 4 seed in the playoff. And so I'm going to go with Oklahoma State as well. Just seeing their strength so far this year, I think they're going to be able to come in and beat a Utah team that has the questions like you mentioned. Well, next matchup, man, this young quarterback, Dylan Raiola, has been lighting things up. Nebraska, number 22 Nebraska, is going to be hosting number 24 Illinois. This matchup is interesting. Two teams I feel we don't really talk about a lot.
Yeah.
But this matchup is going to be good in that it's just another test for Raiola and this Matt Rule-led team. And I don't have anything to suggest I would doubt them in this game. They've showed consistency. They came into a very hyped game against Colorado and were able to take care of business. That was a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, they were able to handle that. They're undefeated on the season. They're at home. I think they're going to continue their winning ways and be able to take down they're going to take down Illinois in this game.
Yeah, I think Illinois, they've had a pretty good start to the season. Of course, they had that one, big marquee win against Kansas. And yeah, Luke Altmaier, kind of running that show. I feel like that's a name. He was at Ole Miss a couple years back. Yeah, we'll get to another name in the next game where it's just like, wow, they have been in college football for a long time. But but yeah, I think I just agree with what you're saying. I think Matt Rule, you see, in just all the past programs he's worked at, year one doesn't look good, but he's building that culture. I've been seeing all these videos about, them going out to the game, Matt Rule talking to the team, and it's getting me fired up. And I think he's built a culture. Dylan Raiola just continues to find new ways to becoming a literal Patrick Mahomes clone. Besides making all the crazy throws on the field. But yeah, I saw that video. He was doing the whole Mahomes pregame thing, and I'm like, what is happening? But yeah, I think Nebraska is just going to be too much for Illinois. Illinois is a good team, but I don't think they have enough playmakers. I don't think they have just the talent necessary to overcome Nebraska.
Yeah, it's freaky a little bit seeing the Patrick Mahomes and Dylan Raiola things, but Matt Rule is coming in doing exactly what Scott Frost was supposed to do.
Yeah.
He was supposed to take the team over and bring him back to national prominence, and it looks like Matt Rule is getting it done. On a different note, totally off topic, but talking about guys who are in college football for a long time, I just heard the other day something I didn't know. Your guy, JT Daniels.
Yeah.
Did he retire football at Rice because of concussions?
Yeah, last year or like this offseason.
Yeah, I didn't even know that. I had heard some things after people were talking about Tua and his concussion history and people retiring from concussions. I didn't even know that about JT Daniels, who was in college for, I think, 10 years.
Yeah, I think, all right, while we're thinking about it, he was USC for 2.
Yes.
He was at Georgia for 2.
Yep.
Was it for 2? It might have been more. And then I think he was at, just Rice. So it might have just been 5 years, but that felt like.
No, West Virginia.
Oh, he was at West Virginia. Yeah, 6 years. Oh, wow. He
played for all 4 teams. But yeah, okay. Get us off of that. You reminded me of that, and it's interesting. We can talk all about quarterbacks who have been in college football for way too long, but we're gonna move on to our next game. We have Georgia Tech at number 19 Louisville. Georgia Tech, a team we've already talked about a few times this year from big matchups. Who you got in this one?
Yeah, so I mean, like we're saying, a couple weeks back, this Georgia Tech offense, I think, has so much speed. You saw that throughout the Florida State game. They did drop one earlier to Syracuse, but I mean, Georgia Tech looks like a good ACC team. You know, they might not be top tier, but they're definitely up there. Louisville, led by Tyler Shuck, which I think he was at Oregon how many years ago? Like I'm pretty sure he 2019 or 2020 he was in Oregon, which I guess is only 4 years ago, but man, that feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
But Tyler Shuck led Louisville offense, who keeps plugging in transfer quarterbacks. They had Jack Plummer the year before from Cal. And they look like a very similar team to last year. And last year we saw that played out really well, where they have a very good defense and their offense just does enough for them to win the game, unless you're playing Florida State, which they might be good enough to beat Florida State this year. But yeah, I think it'll be a kind of a good chess match where Louisville will have to stop Georgia Tech as many times just to get their offense and to score some points. But I think Georgia Tech's actually going to win this. They're going to go to Louisville. I think their offense is too much, and I think Louisville's offense isn't going to show up in the big game.
Yeah, bold pick. I was considering that. You know, Louisville is a 10-point favorite in this game, but being at home, they were projected to be a really good team coming into this year. They have started off the season with 2 games against nobody.
Yeah,
nobody. And I think that's another interesting point of this game. Louisville is 2-0 after playing no one. Georgia Tech has played 4 games already and played some tough matchups. So they have gotten their feet wet a little more. They're definitely more into their season than Louisville. But I'm still going to take the Cardinals to win this game. And maybe even with that, having fresher legs, being fresher, coming off of 2 easier games compared to Georgia Tech. And I think their strength and their offense is going to be able to put up enough points to where Georgia Tech just can't keep up. So I'm taking Louisville in this one. And we got our big one. Your guys.
We're going number 11 USC at Michigan in the Big House. Big matchup in the Big Ten. Spoiler, we already heard your pick before in this game, but we'll let you talk some more. A lot is going to come down to Alex Orji. How is he going to play in this start? And
my biggest thought in this game is that Alex Orji is going to have a Malik Willis type effect on this team. And let me tell you about it. Of course, last week the Packers lost Jordan Love to an injury. Malik Willis comes in against the Colts, and they run all over the Colts. No one thought they would have a chance to win, but had 250-plus rushing yards. He did enough to get them the victory, and their defense played well enough. I think a similar thing might happen here. You've got Michigan, who, despite what we saw against Texas, that might be the best team in the country. Michigan still has a good defense. If Orji can make enough plays, use his legs, and keep the offense on schedule, they can get a victory. So at home, I'm taking Michigan to beat USC in this game this week. Go ahead. Tell us more of your thoughts, Nathaniel.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of laid out everything, and I'd like to say you picked against USC. You're 0-1 picking against USC this year. I mean, small sample size, but we'll, continue to pick against them. It's all good. It's all good. But I think, yeah, just like you're saying, Alex Orji is going to bring a totally different dynamic to the Michigan offense, and it's up to Danton Lynn, which very limited tape on Alex Orji. You just kind of know what he is. You don't really know how they're going to use him exactly. Right. Obviously, this isn't going to be they're going to spread everyone out. And Alex Orji, here's the ball, fling it. Definitely going to be a little different than how they use JJ McCarthy, just because Orji is just such a dynamic runner. So it's up to Danton Lynn to kind of, is he going to use kind of a 3 linebacker set? Is he going to bring out more of a nickel defense? But I've trusted him. I have seen him completely change a horrible USC defense and now can tackle, which this is going to be a big game. Like, will they be able to tackle? Will they be able to play disciplined defense like they have all year? Will that stick up? And, a guy that can teach USC how to tackle, I think can find a way to stop Alex Orchie. So you already know my pick. I'm going USC. I'm fairly confident, which kind of gives me some uneasiness that I'm confident that we're going to win a football game. But, we'll see.
Well, part of me even hopes you get the victory just so one of us can have some joy in this football season and move forward. But we got some good matchups. So far in the season, I'm 9-7 on my picks. You're just ahead of me, 10-6. And I'll mention we're both 0-1 picking Florida. So we can stop doing that. But man, really good games coming up here in the college football slate. We're really excited to watch it, and we'll recap it all with you next week again. That's about it for our podcast this week. Again, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Spotify. You can get all of our content on Instagram, as well as we have instant reactions, different things throughout the week. So tune in. It's always going to be good listening here, and follow along with that trivia. See if you can get more teams right than me. We'll have a new question and everything next week. But thanks again, Nathaniel, for a great week, and we'll talk to you again later.